Howdy, this is Mackenzie Franklin from SideGame LLC here in Colorado Springs, Colorado. Today we're going to be taking a look and reviewing Messina 1347, designed by Vladimír Suchý and Raúl Fernández Aparicio, published by Delicious Games. If you haven't already, please make sure you're subscribed to the channel. It really helps us grow. With that being said, let's start off with a quick overview of the game. Now in this game, you're going to be fighting off the Black Plague that is happening in Messina. You're going to be doing this through a worker placement system. You're going to start each round by populating the board with these plague cubes using this wheel here. You're going to turn the wheel, and this rat is going to determine where the plague cubes appear. You're going to find the matching rats, so like that one would get a plague cube. Afterwards, you're going to populate the board with citizens, and these are people you can rescue. All of the nuns enter the orange spaces, so I'd add one here. After that, you're going to add the rest of them, and then you'll start into the round. You may also have to use these boat tiles to populate the board here with boats, and then add new tiles to the board as well. It all depends on this track up here, the round track. Now that being said, the action phase is very straightforward. On your turn, if you don't have any workers on the board, you'll place them on any space that's not occupied by a standing worker and trigger the effect. If you already have characters on the board that are laying face down, you'll actually stand them up and put them on the same tile or to an adjacent space and trigger the effect. Now during the first round of the game, you're going to be putting all of your characters onto the board, and they're going to be taking up those different spaces, and then you'll put them all down like that, and then for the next round, they'll go from where they are. So you have to be very spatially aware of the effects that are around you. Now, whenever you enter a space, you have a couple of options. Before you make one of those decisions, you have to fight off any plague cubes that are there. For each plague cube, you have to spend one of your fire tokens. That'll take out one of these plague cubes. If there are two, you'll need to spend 2 fire tokens. If you want, you can use one of these major fire tokens, and that lets you take out this plague cube as well as a plague cube from an adjacent space. Every time that you get rid of plague cubes, you're going to be going up on this track for helping out the city. So 1, 2, that'll give you those resources immediately, as well as some endgame points. In addition, after fighting any of the plague cubes, any characters that are there you'll rescue, but they'll have to go into your quarantine area. When you put them into a quarantine area, they go in the top one here or one of the others, and you can only have up to 4. During the game, you'll be able to create some of these quarantine huts, which means they'll be able to create some resources when you pass at the end of the round. If you ever go to a space and you can't fight off the cube, for each cube there, you have to take a rat token. And these rat tokens are going to move you back on this track at the end of the game, as well as be worth an amount of negative points that escalates based on how many you have. So it's very scary to have a bunch of these rat tokens, so be careful. After you remove the plague cubes, you'll be able to take the action that's listed. They can move you up these tracks up here, they can also give you resources, or they can provide you movements with your overseers. And that's where we'll talk about the game board. So the game board is consisting of a lot of different sections here, and you're going to have an overseer token that's going to be moving along this board. Whenever you move it, these different spaces will allow you to trigger effects wherever you are. You'll have citizens here that will populate these different areas. So for example, if I have this nun here, if I were to move my overseer token for the church, it would trigger one of these spaces, and I could use her to produce a fire token. When you move, they get better, and you even have ways that you can upgrade your tokens, and that will allow you to activate extra pieces every time you move your overseers. So it's really cool customization, a little puzzle here in your estate. As we talked about earlier, some of the actions will allow you to build. These can build things like these quarantine huts here, or you can build these large huts that will do some production at the end of every round. In the later game, they'll turn into one-time bonuses that will produce you all sorts of resources, or you can even build wagons, and wagons allow you to take your own special action. During the game, if you have a wagon, you can flip that wagon over to spend it, and that allows you to put one of your control markers on the board, and that is repopulating Messina. So you're going to place this on a tile, and the tile will have a requirement at the top here. Pay the coins, pay these people from your city, and then you get to cover it and score those points. In addition, anytime someone visits this in the future, including you, you get an extra 2 points. That being said, this is kind of risky, because if it gets a plague cube, you're actually going to get a rat every time a plague cube enters a spot that you have a cube on. So be careful with claiming these early, because you may end up with a lot of rats. You're going to be doing this procedure for multiple rounds until in the final round, you'll do a final scoring. Each character has their own scroll board here that has a specific condition, and you can move your marker up them to increase how many points that you're getting for each of these things. Like this one says for the amount of money that you have, this says for how far you got on that blue track, and this one says for the amount of boats that you've rescued. So that's a bare bones overview of the game. Let's talk about my positives. Now, first off, I really love the worker placement system here. I love that you have to be spatially aware as to where you're visiting, and I like how it is first come, first serve. Once somebody's standing on a space, it is no longer usable except for these ports here. Now, that being said, it's very scary because a lot of these spaces are very powerful. So this is just clearly better than this space. However, this space is all the way on the side of the map, so it's a bit harder to get to. And that leads into the next point, where coins have special uses. In addition to being used as building materials here, you can actually spend coins on lots of different things. You can spend coins to move your characters extra spaces, and that allows you to hop around the board and get to key locations. You can also spend coins in order to travel up these tracks. Based on the number of workers you have, you can spend that number of coins to move up either this middle or this bottom track. When you do, that's generally going to give you extra points or allow you to upgrade your overseers, or on this track here, you'll even get extra workers that you can use and place into Messina. I also really like the overseer system as a whole. It's really satisfying to be moving your piece around and getting to customize your board as you see fit. As you play the game, you're going to be picking up all sorts of different tiles, and on these advanced sides of the boards, you're even going to have these one-time super powerful abilities. So you can either invest in there and get a super powerful effect, or get a continuous effect that's going to maybe help you build or upgrade or travel up the tracks. There's lots of choices here, and the stronger you get on a specific one, you just get to start activating a lot of extra bonuses, and it'll help you when you're double dipping into two different areas. Extremely fun, extremely cool. Another thing I really like are these production buildings. I love the idea of having your person who's in quarantine working on something for you. It makes a lot of sense. You're going to be there for a while, might as well make me some fire and some victory points. Or sending your masters in order to give you other resource production buildings, and I like the way that they change into these more advanced buildings as the game continues. I really like this system, and I think it makes a lot of sense, and it makes production at the end of each round feel really, really powerful because you're getting production, which is kind of the equivalent of a single action on the board. It feels really good to get these production buildings going. The next thing I really like are the scroll actions. Each of these is double-sided with an advanced and a basic side, and I really like that these are all different. It's up to you to determine what your scoring path is going to be. Do you take actions that's going to actually score your resources and maybe points right away, or do you invest in your scrolls and go up one of these specific tracks? Am I going to care about helping Messina this game? Am I going to care about the amount of money that I have at the end? Am I even going to trade with the boats? It's up to you to decide this, and I like how you can go for one or go for all these different areas. Very, very fun, very cool, and I love how variable it is. Another really interesting fact about this game is the scalability. The setup for the game is going to be different based on the number of players you have. You're going to have a number of tiles that is different based on the player count that offer new actions. And I really like this. This is going to change up the game drastically based on the player count, and it's going to make it a more interesting game. You're going to have to spend coins to travel more differently here. You're going to have more contentious spots on the board based on the player count. Or in that smaller game, it's going to be way tighter. There's going to be more competition for unique spots. It's just going to be really fascinating the way that the game builds out and the importance of things like coins and other resources and just the amount of play cubes that are even going to be in the game. Really, really cool. Love the scalability in this. Another thing I touched briefly on is the advanced mode and the basic mode. There's two different ways to play this game. An introductory way that has everybody with kind of the same board, or you can change things up with special bonuses and asymmetry. That also includes the scrolls here. You can change up these scoring tiles for lots of different choices and different ways to score. I really, really like this, and I like that there's a lot of different ways to approach how you play this game. The last positive I want to mention are the solo tiles. They're really easy to use. You simply pull one of these tiles, and you'll populate this space with an enemy worker. I really like how this works because first off, they're fighting off the cubes just like you, so they're going to be moving up that blue track, and they're going to be getting rid of all the citizen tiles as well as potential cubes that you can fight. So you have lots of choices here onto what you need to prioritize, but you're very unsure as to what the AI is going to do. It's a really simple system, and it makes a lot of sense. Very good solo mode. Now let's go ahead and move on to the negatives. Now the first thing that I want to talk about are the actions themselves. During the early part of the game, a lot of your actions are going to feel really small. You're going to be getting a single fire. You're going to be getting a couple of wood. It's going to feel like you're not doing much with your 3 workers. But as you play the game, that is going to get remedied, hopefully. So when you're first learning it, it might be like that for a couple more turns than you'd like. Even if you've played this game multiple times, that early game is going to feel pretty small. You're going to have lots of small turns, but then a couple of really big turns. And that's just something to be aware of in this game. You're going to have turns where you're going to get to move your overseers and trigger lots of effects, or you're going to have big production buildings and that'll be generated over time, or you're going to have abilities where you're going to spend a lot of money to climb up some tracks and maybe trigger some combos. So those big turns are very satisfying when they happen, but you will have to work towards them. The other thing I wanted to mention is the upkeep. So this is a bit of a negative. Every round you're going to have some downtime here while you repopulate the city, you put out the plague cubes, you put a new tile out. On this round tracker here, it'll guide you through the steps, so it's easy to follow, but it is a little time consuming and it is a little fiddly. So that is something to be aware of. The last small issue I have with the game has to do with the fire tokens. In the early part of the game, it costs 1 fire token to get rid of a plague cube on the board. Very straightforward and simple. If you use that extra major fire token, you can get rid of a cube and an adjacent one. However, in future rounds, it'll actually cost 2 of the basic fire tokens to get rid of a single plague cube. But the major fire token only gets that special effect if you use 2 major fire tokens. So you have to use 2 major fire tokens to get rid of 1 cube and an adjacent one. Otherwise, this counts as just 1 basic fire token. A lot of people have a hard time wrapping their heads around that, and it's really one that you have to hammer in, that this kills 1 plague cube in the later rounds. This only kills 1 plague cube in the later rounds. Even though there are 2 symbols here, you have to have those 2 special ones in order to get rid of that extra cube. So that's something that you want to make sure that people understand. Otherwise, they're going to be pretty upset and pretty confused when you explain to them that even though that they have this token, that's not going to kill 1 cube, or if they have that set, they don't get that extra kill. And with that being said, those are my major positives and negatives for Messina 1347. Overall, I rate this game an 8 out of 10. It's a blast to play. It very much falls in the line of delicious games where you have lots of little things you're doing that build to large combos and big, awesome turns. It's a lot of fun to play. The worker placement system is great, but there are a couple of fiddly things here and there and small rules that you have to remember. I like the way the production system works, I like the different tracks, and I love the feeling of moving the Overseer around and getting lots of points and working towards my own endgame goals. With a great theme, quick turns, and an overall satisfying combo gameplay, Messina 1347 is a fantastic game. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions about what you saw here, please let me know down in the comments below. SideGame Strong.